I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie, and today we've got an amazing guest, Jeff Weaver, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him before we get started. Though I want to talk to you about Warrior versus Zombie. If this is the first time you've joined us, or if you've forgotten, I want to talk about what we're about. Success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point and provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. In each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life. Entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, really any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, unique value, and a vision that goes generations into the future, and today's guest is no exception, Jeff Weaver. Jeff is an awesome warrior. He's a marketer, he's a leader, he's a mentor, a trainer, a speaker, and really his 35-year journey began in Iowa after graduating from Iowa State University. His success has really been based on a foundation of creating and developing mutually beneficial professional and personal relationships. His journey has included challenging sales and management roles in areas like technology, retail, advertising, real estate, modern barter exchange, and now marketing. So let's meet Jeff Weaver. Jeff, how are you doing today? And tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world.
Well, hey, David, thanks first for having me on. This is really a pleasure to share this information with your listeners. We're in interesting times. I mean, we're 10 months or so into COVID right now. We not only slowed a lot of businesses down, it put a lot of businesses out of business. And many of those were my customers. So it's been an interesting time. There's two things that a company does when cash flow becomes a problem. They cut people and then they cut their marketing. And unfortunately, if they really took a step back and looked at it, they would see that those are the two things they need the most, their people and their marketing, in order to move their product or service. So from a marketing standpoint, these 10 months have been challenging, but not hasn't put me out of business. But it certainly has made working a lot different than what it was in January.
Well, we'll talk a little bit in the third segment about kind of where you're at and what you're doing right now. But specifically, what kind of things are you? We've talked to a lot of warriors during this interesting time that we're in. Are there any specific kinds of things that you're having to do more of or less of than what you were doing before this whole change happened?
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest thing in my barter exchange business, most of my new clientele came by way of referral and networking activities I did, which meant being out, pressing the flesh, talking to people. And that's not been possible. I have a condition that makes it a little scary for me to think about getting COVID. So I've really retracted. It caused me to have to use the phone more, which maybe wasn't my best friend, but I'm trying to warm up to it. It's still pretty cold. But also trying to use Zoom more. The interesting thing about Zoom, I don't know if any of your listeners do networking groups, but they do these things called one-to-ones, which is where you meet with somebody individually to learn about them so that you can refer them, and for them to learn about you so they can refer you. And I found that on Zoom, the conversations are much more business than they are personal, which is good. I mean, I love getting to know people, but I don't need to know how many children you have to help you in your business.
Yeah, I find that interesting. I remember you shared with our group when we talked about marketing and stuff, and I find that interesting. It's everybody kind of comes to the party differently in that, as you know, I teach networking and help people. And so that trust factor is, I think you talked about, is I remember that from your talk, is the most important thing. The question is, what does it take to get there? And what does it take to get that person in the one-to-one comfortable enough or trusting you enough? Not necessarily they trust you, because really when you're doing networking, and this is an area that I'm obviously very not only experienced but passionate about, is that when you're having that conversation, I have to be comfortable in introducing you to one of my most valuable assets, which is my network, my people. So I want to get to know you. So it's interesting, some of the attributes that may not seem to be business related that come out in a one-to-one. So that's an interesting observation on your part. Yes, it's much easier to do it and kind of get into and kind of move from topic to topic in a more face-to-face environment than we can do via Zoom. You kind of feel a little uncomfortable, or on the phone doing the small talk thing, right? I get that.
Right.
And so it's, but that's fascinating. So what about your family, your kids, those kinds of things? How's that all working for you in this? I know you mentioned, some health challenges or things that kind of made you a little apprehensive, if you will, about the COVID or whatever. But what about family? How's your family doing through all this?
Well, we've been very fortunate. My wife is a school teacher, so of course that money just keeps coming. She learned how to teach differently because they have the plastic shields up between the desks, which makes it hard for the kids to hear her, and But she's working through that, so that's been fine, and she's been healthy. I have two daughters. My younger daughter is a cheerleader up at University of North Texas, and they've been able to cheer as long as they stay 6 feet apart from each other. So, no stunts or anything like that. And she's one of those things they call a flyer that gets thrown up in the air 30 feet. And supposedly she gets caught, but they haven't been able to do any of those stunts. My older daughter, she'll be 25 here in a few months. She's a youth minister at a church up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's been challenging because they can't get the kids together. And that's what she's all about, is the kids getting together, interacting with each other, fellowship, and so forth. So from an operational standpoint, it's been virtually nothing. And from an emotional standpoint, it's, been a little treacherous.
Yeah, that's very, it's fascinating. Several things you said there. One is my daughter just graduated from UNT this last May during the COVID. So that made a different graduation experience for her. And she was kind of the last one to complete college out of the 5 kids that I have. So, and a couple of my daughters were cheerleaders, so I do understand the flyer and the challenges there. And actually, I'm also involved a lot in ministry and stuff in my spare time, so I understand the challenges with the youth ministry in the various things. So yeah, it really does change a lot of things. One of the things that I think your experience is, okay, so now that we've gotten through this or gotten to this point, how much can we expect to go back? And I think that really the couple things you hit on, which are things that I'm coming to the conclusion, is there's a certain component of Zoom and what we're doing here on this podcast, which is essentially kind of like a one-on-one conversation that I would have with people in follow-up to connecting in a networking group or whatever, is what is going to be, and I hate to say it, but the new normal, because we're not ever going back to the normal that we had, I don't think, before the shutdown. So I understand how that challenges. I'm always interested to hear, kind of like beyond just the business. So, well, let's do this. I think we've had a good check-in, kind of know a little bit about how you're weathering this storm. I love the way Warriors just kind of process things and keep moving forward, and that's a huge attribute. But I want to have the audience hear a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are today, and then we'll go from there. So let's take a quick break, listen to a little of Ricky Jean Wright, and It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be right back with Jeff Weaver and Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not.
All right, welcome back with Jeff Weaver and Warrior versus Zombie, and we had a great check-in segment, Jeff, and I wanted to now, as I promised, we want to hear a little bit about your story, kind of hear how you got to be doing what you're doing today, how you got into the marketing and the barter exchange and some of that stuff. But first, I kind of want to hear how that unfolded. I'm always fascinated to hear how each warrior gets through the zombies and the challenges on their journey and gets to today, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, well, I think I could start out. My sales and marketing journey really started when I was 8 years old. Paper route. I was up at 5:30 in the morning in the dark delivering papers. Now, today, we would never let kids do that, but back then that was perfectly normal. And the newspaper company would run contests every now and then that you earned points for signing on new subscribers. And with those points, you could buy stuff. So I would just look at the list of what I wanted to buy, and I'd go out and I'd sell exactly that many points and get my prize. And that worked well. I delivered papers from 8 till 18 years old. I delivered for 10 years. But then in high school, I got an interest in veterinary medicine. So I was born and raised in the Cleveland, Ohio area, and I went to school in Iowa at Iowa State because of their veterinary program, which I never made it into. And so I needed to decide what I wanted to do. And my dad was in sales. My uncle was in sales. My other uncles were all attorneys. So I was like, okay, well, I'm either going to be in sales or I'm going to be in law. So I did switch my major over to marketing. I did take the LSAT, the law school admission test, and there weren't any schools that wanted my score. So it was marketing it was. So off I went to do my marketing. But I mean, over the years, it's been interesting. I remember my dad telling me when I was a kid, if you'd have told me I was going to be doing this at my current age, I would have told you were crazy. And I always, every time I changed jobs, I thought about that. I never thought I'd be doing this. I never thought I'd do this. And then here we are. So I did some sales in the technology industry, had some experience in the retail industry. I had 17 years in the real estate industry. The last 6 of it, I was a sales manager for Ebby Halliday, the largest broker in Texas. And I learned a lot as the sales manager about helping the agents, which were independent business people, with their marketing and sales. And so when that changed and I needed to find a new way of another new thing for myself, I'd just gotten worn out. I thought back about the barter industry because I had owned an advertising company for a little while. We produced a poster-sized map done in cartoon style of a business community. And during the map, I had done a couple of barter transactions where I put them on the map and they gave me the same value of what the map would cost. Everybody won. I got a sale. I got paid because I was able to use what they gave me. And so that all worked out. So when I was getting out of real estate, I was trying to think of what I could do. I thought about business coaching, but there's a lot of business coaches out there. but there weren't a lot of barter companies or people bartering. And so I thought, well, this is the way that I could really help small businesses is barter. So that's kind of how I got to get into the barter. And then I added some marketing stuff because my business coach, and I think everyone needs a coach. I know it costs money. You at least need a mentor, which might not cost you anything, but you might want to have 2 or 3 of them to get what a coach will give you. But my coach suggested that I start adding on some marketing stuff. So I did that. And I chose to do marketing stuff that nobody else does. I mean, nobody else does barter exchange. I do a broadcast text messaging, and nobody really provides that service. There's companies that sell text, but they don't provide the service of doing it all for you. And then I have a couple other services that I do as well, like develop marketing plans for small businesses and solopreneurs. So that's kind of my journey, if you will. I think that was kind of what you were after. So.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was looking for. So you kind of brought us up to from where you started, and I kind of see how things moved. I find it fascinating. I had the same experience in terms of my dad saying, I never would have imagined. Now, he started in the stock department at Sears and worked his way up and stayed with the same company for 45 years, working all the way into credit and credit management and that kind of stuff. So he had a little different track, but he didn't. He said, you never know where you're going to end up. I mean, I started mowing, you started throwing papers, I started mowing lawns. So it was kind of one of those, I think we both have entrepreneurial roots there. And we actually take opportunities that we can either, your LSAT story, with, okay, I wanted to do this, or I thought I had these choices, but this door was closed. That door was open. I went through the door that was open. I didn't really sit there and cry because the door that didn't open. And that's kind of the way I was too. I had, offers to go to different colleges, and they would say, hey, you can go here, you can go here, you can go here, and we'll make sure you can do it. But I came from a lower middle class area, right? And so I didn't have a choice. So I had to go with the one that paid me, or that I could afford. And so, I mean, I think there was always those kinds of things, but I mean, again, that's an attribute of a warrior. So answer kind of a question I usually ask, and that is, of this journey getting up to today, and we'll pick up that part when we go into the next thing. What was probably the biggest challenge or zombies that you've incurred during your journey getting to where you are today? What would you say is probably one of the biggest things you've had to overcome?
Well, we talked about COVID a little bit, which is something that happens to us that we have to respond to. We can react or respond. I choose to respond. I think things through. But as far as things that I learned over the course of the journey, I'll just be honest with you and tell you, there's still big zombies that I chase or am chased by every day. One of them is just keeping my mojo, keeping my passion. As a solopreneur now, I have a part-time assistant, but she's a virtual assistant. So as a people person, I need to be around people to get my energy and my mojo. And we don't have that ability right now. And even when we did have that, it still was a challenge sometime to keep my passion for stuff. Let's face it, folks, being a solopreneur, being an entrepreneur, being a CEO, those can all be very lonely jobs because you're the leader of yourself or you're the leader of a bunch of people. Where do you get yours from? And so you need to have those outlets. And I use business coach, and sometimes I've had 2 or 3 coaches at one time because they specialized in different areas of business or psychology or so forth. So I would say that the 2 biggest challenges that I still deal with on a daily basis are keeping my mojo and passion and keeping from the loneliness, taking it all away.
Yeah, that is actually, I think, again, we kind of share some similar things. I'm full on extrovert, and need to be around people. And I get energy from people. One of the reasons why I love doing this podcast is I get to talk to warriors and hear their story and do the networking and stuff, because it creates that accountability, that inspiration, if you will, because it is difficult. So finding that's a zombie a lot of warriors have, is continuing to draw from within and stay inspired, stay energized, keep your mojo, as you said. So I can totally relate to that. Well, this has been great. Let's do this. I know we want to get into talking about barter exchange, marketing, some of the things you're doing as we speak in this environment and where you're going. So let's take a quick break, listen to a little more of Ricky Jean Wright, and It's Not the Getting There. And we'll be back and we'll hear a little bit about where you are and where you're going with your warrior journey.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth.
All right, we had a great check-in and heard a little bit of Jeff's story. And now, before we get started in the third segment, Jeff, I want to talk to you about why you're continuing to do what you're doing, what value you provide, and where you're going. I want to reach out and give a little shout out to our sponsor, Be Connected, where entrepreneurs connect and invite our warriors to get in on the ground floor of the premier hub for successful warriors. Be Connected empowers warriors from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, home-based and small business owners, CEOs and founders, really enabling them to connect and collaborate to create a larger impact in the world. So check us out now and see how you can thrive as we move forward out of the pandemic at BeConnected.com. That's BeKonnected.com, and use the special code MyVisionWarrior when prompted. So with that, let's come back to Jeff. Jeff, I want to hear about this marketing and barter exchange and kind of what you're doing now and why you're doing it and the value you provide and so on.
All right. Well, let's start on the marketing side. One of the services that I provide for small businesses, solopreneurs, and even some sales reps of large corporations is the development of a marketing plan. And the reason that this came about was I was every fall I kind of reevaluate the year, what I've done, what I didn't do, what worked, what didn't work, all that. And I found out that I wasn't doing enough marketing, which of course means you're not going to do enough sales, which you're not going to have enough revenue. You're not going to pay your bills. You're not going to have a profit. So I knew that I needed to work off of some type of a sheet. I didn't need a book. I just needed a little plan. So I developed a really sleek plan that literally comes down to a single piece of paper. It tells you what to do daily, what to do weekly, and what you're going to do that month. The supplemental pieces of paper are the other months, but you can just keep that one sheet of paper to know exactly what you want to do. The biggest challenge that people have with marketing is they think it's hard. It doesn't have to be. They think it takes a lot of time. It doesn't have to. And they think it takes a lot of money. And in a lot of cases, it doesn't take any money. We talked about the phone a little bit ago. The phone cost me nothing to use. So, well, your phone service. So, but you know what I mean? There's no additional charge. So I help people put those marketing plans together. The other thing I'd like to mention is my barter exchange, because that's what I did when I came out of real estate. So I've had my franchise with a company called ITEX. That's ITEX, stands for International Trade Exchange. I've had my franchise now for 10, 11 years. And I have about 200 clients here in North Texas, and we've got about 15,000 clients nationwide and in Canada. And a lot of people don't understand the power of barter in their business. Barter, it's easier to make sales with barter than it is to make sales for cash, because people don't have a lot of cash. but they do have their time or their service available that can convert to a barter and then convert to cash. The other thing is that it helps with cash flow, because whenever you're bartering to get a service, you're not using your cash, or you're not using cash you didn't have in the first place, or that cash just falls straight to the bottom line. So I'm very excited about barter, very passionate about barter. Works very well for many different kinds of businesses, whether you're a dentist, an optometrist, a printer, an HVAC guy, a plumber, a maid service, a coach. The list goes on and on of people that I have that are benefiting from barter. So that's a little bit about where I am today in my business. What was the next question?
Well, I think in terms of, I mean, you kind of hit on it, but just your unique value in your marketing and your barter, and I kind of what I picked up in just listening to you is part of it is the fact that you have incorporated barter into your marketing or incorporated marketing into your barter, which is not something that every marketer kind of brings to the table, right? I frankly didn't understand a lot about the barter concept until I think you and I met or whatever and got a little bit more understanding of that. So I think that is a way to not only sell but market some of your products and services, and it's kind of a two-way street. So I think that you bring that, and then the other part of the unique value that I was hearing, at least in your description of what you're doing, is that single page marketing plan. I like that, that simplicity, that lower cost, lower time investment, more manageable, because we all know that having a plan is great, but it doesn't mean anything unless you can execute it, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of, that's what I heard. Now, you can feel free to correct me. That's kind of part of the value proposition that I think I see or hear in what you're saying.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, when I go to networking groups and I introduce myself as a marketing guy, but I'm the marketing guy that does something that nobody else does, and they listen then, because you're not just one of the other guys, you're not just one of the guys doing social media. As a unique proposition, one of the things is that I'm getting close to the fourth quarter of life here. And so my marketing training started with traditional marketing and has now grown into digital marketing. So I can bring all of that to the table. And I did see that consultants and business coaches were preparing, 30 and 50 and 60 page marketing plans that just end up on the shelf. And so they come back to their client to say, how's it going? And the client says, oh, it's up there on the shelf. That's not going. And so that's where I came up with the one pager. And then, of course, barter is completely unique. Nobody has, well, not nobody, but most people tell me, gosh, I didn't know this even existed. How long have you been in business? Well, we've been in business since 1960. So it's just a very little known strategy that is extremely powerful.
Yeah. And so from a standpoint, so that's okay. So we're on track there. So tell me, you mentioned that you're in the fourth quarter, but obviously you're not done. So if anything were possible, what are you hoping to achieve? Kind of what's the size of the impact, or what is it that, if anything were possible, what would the future look like for Jeff Weaver and your business?
Well, we talked a little bit about being a people person and the loneliness sometimes as a solopreneur. As I said, I have a part-time person, but she's virtual. I would like to be an employer. I would like to give people jobs that they really can value and really enjoy. And with my different services that I offer, there's plenty of backroom stuff that can be done. The barter exchange can have an inside salesperson. It can have an outside salesperson to sign up new members. The marketing plan, that's got to be, put together and typed up and everything. And so if anything's possible and I can do it, which I can, I want to employ people. And, not a lot. I'm not interested in a 100-person company. But if I had 3 or 4 people full-time employed at a nice living wage, I would be very proud of myself.
Awesome. Well, that's a good aspiration. Interestingly enough, that part I think I don't mind giving people work. I'm not looking for employees, so we're a little different in that regard. I've been there, done that when it comes to having large groups of people dependent upon me and in a leadership or a business role. And I retired in '05, and so I decided, my ideal day doesn't necessarily include that. But I get that. That's actually a huge value. And like you said, knowing that you're helping those people feed their families and improve themselves is a very rewarding thing. So that's awesome. Well, let's do this. Let's kind of take a break here, hear a little bit more of Ricky Jean Wright. And then we come back in this, what I call Land the Plane segment. What I'd like for you to do is share, we've kind of covered a lot of ground here about your journey, where you're at. There's a number of takeaways we've already explored. But if anybody took anything away from this podcast as they were listening, what 1, 2, 3 things that would you want them to take away? And then we'll make sure that people know how they can follow up with you after this podcast. So with that, let's listen to a little bit more of Ricky Jean Wright, and It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be back with Jeff Weaver and Warrior versus Zombie.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always 2 different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God.
All right, we're back with the Land the Plane segment of Warrior versus Zombie, and we've had a great journey here with Jeff Weaver. We've kind of heard his story, had an awesome check-in, heard a lot about what he's doing and his aspirations and where he's going. But Jeff, I told the audience before we took a break, is I want you to kind of distill it down for them. If anything, we took away anything from this podcast, what would you want us to take away? What kind of nuggets or a couple things that you'd like us to take away?
Thanks. I appreciate that. In fact, I have 3 quick ones here. Again, would relate back to my father who was in sales. He told me, son, if you're not early, you're late. So I have, I can probably count on one hand times that I've been late, and almost all of those, it was uncontrollable for me. I would have been on time had there not been an accident, where a lot of people, I think, rush out the door and make up a story about how heavy traffic was. I show up 10 or 15 minutes early. It gives me time to get my head clear and make sure that I'm ready to go. Another one is I want people to understand no one succeeds on their own, period. So when I talk about having a coach or a mentor or even a peer group, you can, even start a peer group. Nobody succeeds on their own. And then I would say that probably one of the most famous quotes of all time from Zig Ziglar, you can have everything in life that you want if you help enough other people get what they want. In other words, you've got to care. If you can care about everybody else ahead of yourself, you'll have everything that you ever wanted in life. So I thank Zig Ziglar for that.
Yeah, that's an awesome, I love, that's one of my favorites as well. In fact, one of our guests, Scott Schilling, that's one of his favorite quotes too. And I believe that's true. I mean, frankly, that's the basis for everything that I do with all the networking groups and everything else is really, and even this podcast is I want to serve the other folks. And then if money or the benefit accrues, it'll accrue because you've provided the value that you have. So I think that's beautiful. And then the fact that you said that life is a team sport, and I think that's always something that, even though we're entrepreneurs, even though we're kind of by ourselves, we need other people around us to encourage us and keep us moving forward. So yeah, those are awesome takeaways, and I think they'll serve our Warrior audience very well. They serve me just listening to you say them. So I'm for sure going to take those away. How do we stay in touch with you, Jeff? How can we reach out to you? Can you give us a way that we can easily get back in touch with you, maybe get some information on your barter exchange or your marketing, one-page marketing? I kind of like that idea, those kinds of things. How can we circle back with you?
I think the best and easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn, just Jeff Weaver. And if you want, you can add the word ITEX, ITEX, and that'll help bring me to the top of the list, because there's a few Jeff Weavers out there. But here in Dallas, Fort Worth area, so that'll help you as well. I've got links to my websites in there. I've got my phone number in there, or phone numbers. I think I've even given my cell phone. So if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn was the pivot point that has everything you'll need.
Yeah, that's actually so Jeff Weaver, and then put ITEX, ITEX. That way we'll find the right Jeff Weaver. I know I have the problem.
I'm right to the top.
David Roberts is pretty common. So when I tell people to find me on LinkedIn, it's like it'll bring up 100 or at least, so unless I give them some delimiters. But yeah, so Jeff Weaver and then ITEX, and we can find how we can connect with you very easily that way. And in fact, at some point here, I'll introduce you to Be Connected, because that's a good way to augment your efforts to get those direct connections with using LinkedIn as well. So anyway, well, that's great. I appreciate it. And it's been a great journey, Jeff. And I'm hoping that you found it beneficial. I know the audience is going to love hearing your story, hearing your journey. And for those of you that are regular listeners, or maybe you just came into Warrior versus Zombie for this episode, I encourage you, if you found us on whatever platform you're on and you prefer to listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or iHeartRadio or Spotify, you name it, we're on every platform out there. So look for us there. We're also on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel. So I encourage you to do that. And one final reminder before we hear from Ricky Jean Wright is reach out to BeConnected.com. That's BeeKonnect.com, and enter My Vision Warrior and the code to check out this premier platform for connecting warriors and entrepreneurs and helping us to go forward to make more of an impact as we go. So with that, let's hear the final segment of It's Not the Getting There with Ricky Jean Wright. Thank you again, Jeff. It's been amazing. Really appreciate you sharing with our audience. And we'll get back with everybody at the next episode of Warrior versus Zombie.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know.